Welcome to the football show on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Alison McConnell, delighted to be joined by Tam McManus, Alan Ruff and Richard Foster. And here's a look at what we've got coming up on today's show.
Scotland are relegated to Nations League B after Greek tragedy at Hampden. Is Steve Clarke the right man to lead the side into World Cup qualification? Kasper Schmeichel saves Ronaldo penalty before Celtic injury scare. And Nicholas Raskin earns standing ovation after starring in Belgium win.
So, Ruffy, Scotland 0, Greece 3. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I think we were all disappointed. I think on Friday, the last time we were on, we were saying we were a bit fortunate over in Greece. I think the way things went. But again, you know, we saw the quality that team had and they showed it on the night and we just didn't perform. We were looking at our big players and they never turned up. I think McTominay was the only one that put in a reasonable performance. But again, it's back to the blackboard again. Because, I mean, I think Stevie Clarke did think we were on another run. But again, he has to pick up the pieces.
Richard, did you feel as though there was maybe a portent of what was to come last night in that second half shown on Thursday night?
Yeah, I think, you know, I thought they were excellent, Greece. And Scotland, after having performed so well in the first half, then looked a bit kind of shocked by how the dynamic of the game changed. I think Karetska's coming on in the first game, he just gives them pace in the attack and just quality going forward. And at times we couldn't get out of our own box. And by the way, take nothing away from that performance. I thought they defended very, very well. Grant Hanley in particular blocking umpteen shots, you know, winning headers in the box. But I think that was just, you know, that showed us the quality that Greece have. They were unable to score, but in a two-legged tie, you're always then worried about if they started that tempo, how difficult it would be for Scotland. But to be fair, I thought Scotland actually started the better of the two teams on Sunday. But then once Greece get that first goal, there was no looking back from them, and they just kind of ran over the top of Scotland.
Okay, well, here's what Steve Clarke had to say on it.
Listen, like I said, we've had a decent run. This is a bump in the road. If there's one thing I've learned over my time in charge of the national team is there are bumps in the road. It's how you react to it. We have to react to this one and make sure that come June we know what we're trying to address, and come September we know what we're trying to do, which is qualify for the World Cup. I didn't really notice them, to be honest. I'm focused on other things other than what the supporters are doing. I always have been.
Tam, Steve Clarke called it a bump in the road. John McGinn said it was embarrassing. What did you make of it?
Listen, first and foremost, I think Greece over the two legs deserved to win. I thought that the first half over there we were better, and I thought we started, like Richard said, I thought we started the better yesterday, first 15-20 minutes, but then Greece scored and then it left gaps. We had to go and try and attack the game and go forward, and it left them gaps to pick us off. I think that when you look overall at Steve Clarke's record, I think it's good. I think his win record's maybe 44-45%. He's got us to two major tournaments. I think he deserves the opportunity to get us to the World Cup in the Americas. If he doesn't, I think he'll be gone. I think he'll walk away. I don't think he'll have to worry about being sacked. I think he knows that he has to get us to that tournament, and if he does, you know, I think he's done his job. But in terms of the game, I thought that Greece were by far the better team from 20 minutes onwards, and they deserve to win. But I think, you know, you don't need to rip it up and start a game because of one result. I thought it was a really disappointing performance from Scotland, really poor. 10, 11 guys not playing to potential, not playing well, you're going to get that result. But I still believe that Steve Clarke is the man to take us forward.
Yeah, we'll come back to that maybe later on the show, but there was a lot of chat, roughly, just about how Scotland lined up, about the starting 11. What would you have liked to have seen?
I mean, I always think when you're playing at home, you've got to show a great deal more attacking ability than what we do. We seem to, everything's in the midfield. I think the guys are right. The first 20 minutes we looked good. The passing was all good, but the passing was on the wrong area of the park. It was in our half. No, there was nothing going forward. I would like us to try and play. I know we've not got that many strikers, but at least play two forward up front. You know, play three at the back, five in the middle, two up front. You know, I think because when we get into wide areas and the ball's coming into the box, there's just sheer advance, and it's not a great way at home. You want people, you know, getting off their seats and, you know, getting more goal scoring opportunities. I think we only had 3 shots at goal or something like that.
Is it inevitable, do you think, Richard, that there are question marks maybe over this Scotland side when you look and there's a real paucity of choice when it comes to strikers? There's not really, you know, you look at Shea Adams' record, Scotland don't have a prolific striker that they can call upon. If you look through international football and you look at what teams that are fairly successful, maybe countries akin to Scotland size, if they're successful, they tend to have a focal point, they tend to have a striker, and the other side of it, they tend to have a fairly solid defensive pairing too. When you look at the options for Scotland, you've got a glut maybe of midfielders, you've got tremendous choice in particular areas of the pitch, where these are two areas where you just don't have the same depth of choice.
Yeah, you're entirely right there. There's not a lot of choice for Steve Clarke to look at, but I think you put Shea Adams in the team, and we don't play a way that suits him. I mean, the amount of times the ball's bouncing at his neck, his head, his chest. He's got a defender behind him. He's got a midfielder on his toes. We don't give him any chance. Now, I don't think he's never struck me as a natural goal scorer, and I know he scores goals and he's currently scoring goals in Italy, but I just for Scotland, I don't think he gets probably the same service he gets at the club. So then you need to try and play a different way. And I felt in the first leg with playing Lewis Ferguson, we had that because he would run beyond. He's a powerful boy. His timing of his runs is really good. So he's the one that can stretch the back line of Greece, and Shea Adams can then drop into that number 10 pocket and actually link the game and get us forward, which they done. But then you take him out of the team, and every single player then becomes a player who wants to come to the ball. Now, I'm not saying that Lewis Ferguson is a winger who runs at players. He's not, but he's a powerful runner who runs beyond the defence. And when you have that, you either get in from a longer pass or the Greece defence have to drop. It creates space elsewhere. But replacing him with Christie is a guy who wants to come to the ball. I don't think he's got the power and the dynamism anymore to go and play as that high, that higher midfielder, that kind of right-sided midfielder. I think at Bournemouth he's playing almost as a number 6, where he can handle the ball. He's confident, he's composed, he's got good quality, and I think we played him out of position at the expense of Lewis Ferguson, who I thought was one of our better players on Thursday, which was a strange one for me. But I think you need more from your midfielders when you don't have that many options up front.
I was just about to say, do you think Christie was wasted out on the right?
Yeah, I think he was. Unfortunately for us, Ben Doak's injured, and he's been a key miss for us. I think you've seen in the previous games, he gets people off their seats. Ruffy was talking about going creating chances. We've not got anybody that can go and square a fullback up and take them on. I think we were very similar. Richard's spot on. I think it was very similar midfield players all in one area, all coming to get the ball. Ball was coming up to Shea Adams. The service he got was terrible the whole night. So I felt sorry for him. He's going to get it in the neck, as most of the players, but I just thought with too many players just off their game.
But if you go into, I know over the both legs, but you go into both legs, we're not carrying any wingers in the squad, whether that's because there's none available, they're injured. But then don't play a formation that's got wingers. Play. Either a 3-4-3 and you've got almost two number 10s behind your striker, or a 3-5-2 as Ruffy points out, and put your two wing backs because with Tierney coming back in, you've got that natural left side.
There was a point when Tierney had the ball last night and he looked up and there's nowhere to go. He started advancing forward, there's nowhere to hit it, so he hit it back, and of course the boos then ring around across the whole stadium. But is that reflective maybe just of that, the system's just not playing to the strength of the players that you've got available?
I think when you play the 4-2-3-1 and you have your wingers, they're the ones that almost create the length of the game. I think I know Celtic play it slightly differently, but you look at Celtic under Ange, even under Brendan, their wingers are almost on the highest players on the pitch, with the striker dropping in. And Scotland don't have that. Scotland have midfielders playing out there who are always naturally going to come in towards the ball. That's why I felt on Thursday, Ferguson, he created space for his teammates and himself because he's willing to run beyond. So I think you've gone into the game with no natural wingers playing a formation that you need natural wingers for. So I think we'd have been better suited to the 3-5-2, but then that would have probably meant dropping one of your midfield, one of the midfield four that played. So whether he just wanted to get his best players on the team, I don't know. But I don't think the formation helped the players that he had.
You surprised that Ferguson didn't start?
Yeah, I thought he was very good in the first leg. I think we were all talking about how much he's come on, no professionalism, playing abroad, looking much stronger. I thought he would possibly expected to play, but again, it's a tactical decision. It's up to the manager. I just find sometimes Stevie's not over defensive. I just think he wants to be more solid, try and get that goal, because as I said on Friday, if you were coming up against a team like Scotland and you let Scotland score first, that's what we're good at, seeing out the game, making the blocks that Richard's talking about, defending particularly well. I just find when we have to go and win a game, we get exposed when we try to go forward and we lose possession, and we just can't defend when we're all over the place.
I think one thing you can criticise Steve Clarke possibly has been too loyal to players. I think then when you look at somebody like Grant Hanley, who's not been playing for Birmingham, and you've got McKenna, who's been playing every week in Spain in the top league. Again, leaving out Ferguson last night, he's playing Kenny McLean. So I think if you're going to criticise Steve Clarke, you can maybe criticise him for being too loyal to players.
Do you think there's players that are almost undroppable?
I think so. And Ryan Christie, I was not surprised he came back in because Steve Clarke loves him. He's played him every big game, and to be fair, Ryan Christie's done well for him. But I think you've got to play players that are playing. Lewis Ferguson's one of the best players in Serie A at the minute. He's captain of Bologna.
He's in form too.
He's in
playing
form.
a
He
confident.
played the first game, you drop him, you bring Christie back in again. Grant Hanley done well the first leg, suited him, just backs to the wall. Second leg, yesterday didn't play particularly well. So I just think if you're going to criticise Steve Clarke, which you will get, I think you can criticise him for maybe being too loyal to certain players.
Did it have maybe have echoes, just the aftermath of the game, maybe just have echoes of some of the dips in Clarke's tenure when he's been with Scotland? And I'm thinking of that, like the World Cup playoff defeat to Ukraine, then the defeat in Dublin that came after it, the loss to Hungary over in Germany last summer. It just felt last night there was a real apathy about Hampden. Even 20 minutes to go or whatever in that game, there was no sense of the crowd staying with them and thinking you're going to get back into it.
Yeah, I think at the stage, that our record was at 1-15, and we were playing good sides, there's no doubt about that. And I think everybody was beginning to waver a wee bit after the Euros, should he stay, should he not? And then we had 2 or 3 reasonable results, the Portugal one, Croatia, so everybody got back on board again. Now he's put himself in the team in a position trying to get everybody back on board again. Well, obviously there's 2 friendlies coming up which we should win, but the World Cup is the one where everybody wants to be at, so he's going to have to get in these 2 friendlies wins, so when we go into our first game for the World Cup qualifiers, the fans are back on board, because you can't keep losing them every 2 months.
To go back just to the selection choices, we watched a 17-year-old come to prominence for Greece, and we saw what he'd done across 2 legs. We've got a 17-year-old, you've got Lennon Miller sitting on the bench. He was the subject of much discussion in the build-up to this game, and then he gets no game time. Were you baffled, Richard, that he's not introduced at any point? Maybe last night's not the best game for him.
I'm not baffled, and obviously, having kind of seen Lennon for a number of years now, I'm always going to be biased. I'm always going to be on his side, but I think he's an exceptional football player. Now, I don't say that, and I don't want us to pin all our hopes on Lennon Miller. I think after the game last night, I think a lot of us are now pinning our hopes on Ben Doak, which is unfair.
Yeah.
So I don't want that to happen to Lennon, but I think he's good enough to play in that midfield. I think he'd have given us a freshness, something a little bit different. I think, kids, they play with absolutely no fear. When I was Lennon's age at 18, I was terrified coming onto the football pitch because it was so, kind of so nerve-wracking. But he just doesn't feel that. He's so composed. He's played at Celtic Park. He's played at Ibrox, and nothing phases him. He captains Motherwell when Paul and Stephen are out of the team. So he's a player that I think you're never going to know how good he is at that level until you expose him to it. And I think sometimes we're guilty of that. But but he's got no caps and he's got no experience. Well, how does he get the experience? You look at Karetsis, as we spoke about before, 17 years old. I'm not sure how many caps he's got, but he's going to go on to get a fair few. That's for sure. But I think just expose these. And let's be honest, this game, yes, you kind of get relegated out of League A. Is it a big disaster that you're not in that league? Because you're not going to be playing against the same level of teams. You're going to be playing against teams more kind of your level. So is it would it have been a perfect opportunity over a two-legged affair to give Max Johnston some game time, to give Lennon Miller some game time? I believe it would, because they're going to be the future. I know Ralston's not that old, but I think still getting bedding in the young players or letting them get some game time is always going to be beneficial. And I don't think the 2 of them, Max and Lennon, to use them as examples, I don't think they'd have made the team any worse. The only thing I will say to that, we don't see them train. We see them get picked. I know Lennon's a good trainer, and I've got, I would bet money that he was probably very, very good in training, probably one of the better players. But we don't know. So Steve Clarke might see something in training that he doesn't like from Lennon, he doesn't like from Max, or it might just be that he thinks it's too soon. He's the manager, he gets to make these decisions. But for me, why pick him in your squad if you're not going to give him any game time?
Is the biggest problem for Lennon and the people he's got to replace because of the pedigrees that they've got and who they're playing with and what they've done in the game.
I think so.
As you say, as the manager, he's got to make that decision.
But if you look at Billy Gilmore, I think that's a position that Lennon plays. Now, I thought Billy Gilmore played really well on Thursday. I thought he struggled a bit on yesterday. So that's the time that, and Lennon's a like-for-like replacement, and I think Lennon brings a little bit more. He's got more stature, more physique. He's got the same, he's as good a passing range for me. He's good on set plays. He reads the game very, very well. I think maybe it's something that kind of Billy Gilmore got caught out with for a couple of the goals, just his position. He kind of vacates that middle of the pitch, whereas I don't think Lennon does that as much. So it could have been an opportunity for him to come on and play there and give us something a little bit different, because when what you're doing is not working, there's no point just replacing it and going, well, let's just keep doing the same. Sometimes you need to do something different. And for me, putting in the younger players would have been that difference. Now, I'm not saying we would have beat Greece because they were excellent, but I'm just saying it would have possibly been a good time.
And there's a freshness to it. Yeah. You obviously know Lennon well, will have worked with him. Do you think he would have been affected by all the hullabaloo and the build-up, the dissection of I'm going to be I want to go in and be the best player, which we've all agreed that we think it's to be commended, but it seemed to put a few noses out of joint.
Yeah, and I think that this is what the media is in Scotland. We've got a kid here who's, for me, is an absolute exception. He's exception to the rule. He's fantastic. He's playing way beyond his years. But he then gets called into the Scotland squad, and then the first opportunity we get to knock him down, we do it. We ask. Is it the assistant Carver? We ask Steve Clarke. We ask constantly, but what about these comments? What about these comments? And I actually thought Steve Clarke spoke really well on it, saying, well, God forbid we've got a player who wants to come in and better himself. But this is just the way we are in this country. It's like, right, let's build them up. And the first opportunity we get, let's knock them down a peg or two.
Yeah, I
just think they made far too much of it. Lennon's not an arrogant player, but Lennon believes in his own ability. And when you look at the game last night, I believe he could be one of the best players in that squad within a couple of months, because it's not like they were all at top form, and a lot of the midfielders are getting a little bit older.
And that's the thing, when you look at, you've got World Cup qualifiers in September that kick off. I think there's 2 friendlies before then. Do you think you have to maybe shake it up a bit?
I think there'll be a cry for it, and now amongst the supporters after watching that last night, you'll see the young Greek players. There was 2 or 3 of them last night in the team. I think they had overall a very, very young side last night, and Scotland fans will be looking, if Greece can do it, we should be doing it. We should be giving young players an opportunity. So the next 2 friendlies are a good opportunity to go and play Ben Doak if he's fit. Maybe Max Johnston at right back. I think Anthony Ralston's played more games for Scotland than Celtic, so does he really deserve to play it? He doesn't let us down, but I think it's a chance for Max Johnston as well. Lennon Miller to come in. Maybe young James Wilson if he's still, which will come on last night. So it's a chance to have a look at these guys before you go into playing the big boys again. You're playing, I think we've got Denmark in our group, and we've got Greece, who are going to be a handful for us as we've seen. So I think the next 2 games, the friendly games, are a perfect opportunity for Steve to go and have a look at younger players.
Ruffy, just listening to the post-match chat last night, there was a lot of talk about Ben Doak and a lot of focus on him. Do you think Scotland are asking too much of him too early?
Probably, but I think we need him. I think what we've seen already in the Scotland jersey, he can give us something new, something fresh. Somebody who wants to get into the latter third of the park, wants to deliver balls into the box. We didn't have that at all last night. I just think that, as Richard said, these younger boys have no fear. They want to play, they want to pull on the jersey, they want to show everybody how good they are. And that can only be good for the team.
McGinn also had said, it was a kick up the backside. Now, obviously he was stopped, walking off the pitch, everything's still a bit raw in the aftermath of defeat, but would you ask the question maybe why you need a kick up the backside? He's obviously referencing the game that's coming up in the World Cup qualifiers and saying that's maybe a kick up the backside we need, but you're asking the question maybe why do you need it?
Yeah, but these things happen. It's easy to think that football players will go out and play well every single game, and they'll be confident every game. And I think possibly that game there was because I think we possibly made too much of the result on Thursday night. Not everyone obviously, but it's a fantastic result. But see if that's a standalone game and it's in the qualifiers and you nick a 1-0 win after defensive display, you kind of go, right, brilliant result, we get the win, so then we can kind of dissect that and go, that was a really good performance. But see when it's the first leg of a 2-legged affair and Greece completely dominate the second half and you're only 1 goal ahead, I think we probably should have been, as a nation, we should have just kind of calmed down a little bit and not expected too much.
A lot of them thought the job was done.
I think so especially we're coming back to Hampden, we're going to do this, we'll be on the front foot. That was never going to happen. So I think it was possibly a kick up the backside for the players, but also us as fans. I think it was a bit of a realisation. You know what? Right, okay, we nicked a 1-0 away from home, but Greece are at the moment Greece are a better side than we are. Now that might change by the time that we play them in September, but I think it was probably a reality check for everybody, not just the players.
Here's what Kenny McLean had to say on it last night.
Sure, it's the same with everybody across the country, just because we put ourselves in a decent position after the first leg and then threw it away really, because I think we did throw it away. We gave them their goals, I think, and gave them a foothold in the game at half time, and then obviously when you start the second half the way we did, we give ourselves a mountain to climb. So it's I think it's a lot of it's down to us, which is the most disappointing thing.
Did they throw it away, Ruffy, or do you think Greece just worked out a plan to go and attack Scotland?
Greece were better than us. No, man for man, I thought would be. I think we all forgot the results that they had on the road. When they went to England, you know, they went to Republic of Ireland. You know, they had shown that away from home that they can beat the top notches. We haven't produced that kind of form yet. I think we all thought we were good enough to at least get a draw at home, but it wasn't to be. You know, I thought we were poor defensively. I thought the back four got far too deep. I think one of the goals, Grant Hanley was nearly beside Craig Gordon. One of the goals, you know, when all the Greek players were at the edge of the 18-yard box, you know, there was nobody. They just seem to have lost the plot. I just think, I know I've never been a manager at that level, and I know you have to make decisions of what kind of formation you play with the players you've got, a 3-4-3 or whatever. I just feel at home we should be more attacking. I think we should be solid in the midfield, because the midfield generally is where the game's won and lost, but I think we should give us more striking opportunities, and I think we should get back to, instead of 4 at the back, 1, 3 at the back, I think he should make up his mind who he thinks his best players are, and let's get back to a solid 11.
He had to play Kieran Tierney. I mean, he's playing for Arsenal at the minute in the Premier League, and he's sitting on the bench for us. You know, I know people will say, well, you can't play him and Robertson. Him and Robertson have got a good relationship. When you play 3-5-2, you either play Tierney at left centre back, you can get forward, and Robertson left wing back, and then play Alison wing back. So I totally get the formation. I don't think it was right either at home at Hampden. I think we kind of played for a draw. I thought we thought, right, we're 1-0 up here, let's just keep it tight, knowing that maybe nick a goal. I think we had to go for a throat and goal with 2 up front, play either James Wilson or Tommy Conway, somebody like that, or a boy Hurst has come on, play him up front with Che Adams and go at them. So I thought we were a wee bit negative in our outlook and our formation yesterday.
I think tactically, Richard, I mean, you know, because you're running the teams and that, if you go and play somebody and they play 1 up front, you don't need 4 at the back. So you just need 3 to mark 1 and push another one of their players into the midfield. So what you're doing with just playing 1 up front, you're giving them an extra player.
Yeah, you're right. Your extra player, well, your extra 2 players in your back line, and you know it's very difficult in a 2 to ask one of your centre backs to step all the way into midfield to an attacker or a number 10. Easier than a 3 because you've still got that protection, because you can then promote one of your defenders forward, which allows you to be a bit higher up the pitch. But in a 2, there's no way, you know, Suter and Hanley are going to step into that number 10. And Greece were very good at finding the players between the lines,
just exploiting the space,
and they're exploiting the space, because Ruffy's right, because we've got 4 at the back and they've essentially got 1 striker up, but he's managing to pin back our back 4, so therefore there were 3 players down somewhere else, and they were picking those spaces, and then we were probably jumping a bit too late, and at times they carved us open really easily. And I think in the 3, I think going and getting the result on Thursday, I think it's all right then to revert to the 3. And put Tierney in left centre back and
he's thought it's not broken, don't.
Yeah, but I think it's okay to change, because the dynamic of the game will change, and then even that said, that with Tierney as one of your 3 at the back, he'll happily step all the way in because he's used to dealing with wingers, so it gives you that kind of mobility at the back line. So it would almost become a 4 at times anyway with him in midfield. So it's I do think we did set up. In terms of the formation, it looks like it's an attacking formation, but the personnel we played and the way we played it is quite a negative formation. But I think we played right into Greece's hands. I think we gave them the space in the areas where they have really good players, and they punished us.
In the cold light of day, you know, obviously there's much consternation about a defeat at Hampden and the manner of it. But in the cold light of day, are Scotland a Nations League B team?
Yeah, we spoke about it on Friday. Everybody had an opinion of, do you want to play against the big boys, which as footballers we all want to challenge ourselves against better players, and the Spains, the Italians, the Germans, but it's ranking now. It's all about ranking points. Because we were in that Group A, we're now ranked 3 in the World Cup group. We're down at 3 now. That's a big drop. You want to be one or two, in the World Cup group, but because we were in that Group A and having that 1 in 15, we dropped down the rankings. So Richard said at the beginning, now we're playing against teams of our same ability, so we should be winning games. So the more games you win, the higher up the ranking you go. So being in the B group, I think, suits us better.
Well, in some ways it might actually give Scotland a better chance of qualifying for a playoff spot for the Euros, for the next European Championships, being in League B rather than League A, which is maybe not it's not what MD would want. I think you would have wanted to have stayed in League A, but realistically, I think maybe Scotland's players and just where Scotland are now is probably.
Well, it might be beneficial for us as well, because as we're saying, if we go into a B group in the nations and we're going to be playing not the big sides, it might be the advantage of playing these younger players. Because if you're not going to throw them in against Germany or Italy or Spain, you've got to drop them in against the lesser teams to give them that experience.
You feel as though there was an apathy last night amongst the Scotland fans. It felt just there was no energy within the stadium. Steve Clarke said he didn't hear the boos at full time or at half time, but there was no sense of encouragement either. And if you think with 20 minutes to go and it was tied at 3-1 in aggregate, if Scotland today have got a goal back, it was very much alive, but there was no sense of urgency or energy just within the crowd.
The problem was that we didn't look like scoring. I think that if you're a supporter and you're knocking on the door, you're getting corners, shots, you get behind the team. It was just, there was nothing. It was like Greece were so comfortable. We didn't look as if we were going to score. He was throwing boys on. I think the first goal was crucial. I think that sucked a lot of energy out of the stadium. I think if we get the first goal and had 2 goals to hang on to, then his formation would have been ideal, because it would have been, you had something to protect, something to sit behind. You play 4-5-1, player one up and just make it difficult for them. But because they get the first goal, we had to go and chase it. Our fans are going, right, get forward, rolling us on. Whereas the tie was level. But because we're at home, the supporters wanted to go forward. So, yeah, I thought the last 20-25 minutes, I just thought there was no belief, 1, with the players, and 2, in the stands, that we could come back.
The other thing as well is the other 2 goals that they got came at the wrong time for us.
Is it ever a good time for a goal?
A goal just before half time and then a goal just after half time.
It killed it. It just killed it. I mean, 13 seconds or something, wasn't it? Over the start of the second minute. But you mentioned that Steve Clarke's got credit in the bank, and we had all these conversations after the European Championships in Germany this summer. But do you think it's inevitable now that people start to question whether or not he's the right man to take Scotland into a World Cup campaign?
Yeah, I think there'll be a lot of supporters out there. Yeah, I think you've got to sit down and look at where we were and where we are now. Obviously, the Euros was a disappointment. Is this Scotland team as good as we've ever had for a long, long time? You have to make your mind up on that. Have we got better players on the park? We certainly have players on that are playing at a higher level, which we never had before. So for that aspect, yes, I think supporters just want to win games. You want to be on a winning team. You want to be on a winning run of 10 instead of losing 10. So we've got to start winning games, and the 2 friendlies we've got lined up are just ideal for warm-ups.
But you think Steve Clarke's still the right man to take Scotland?
I think he is at the moment. I think it's easy. I think Tam spoke about it earlier. It's easy to have that knee-jerk reaction because, because of the performance. The level was so low, and we didn't look anything like a Scotland team. And I'm just kind of reading down the list of results there. It doesn't make for great reading. I'm not one who says, "Oh, but we'll keep Steve Clarke because who else would take the job?" I don't ever think that should be the argument, because that's for the powers that be to then go and find another person. But I think at the moment, I think the players seem to like Steve Clarke. The players seem to buy into what he's trying to do. They just didn't perform on yesterday. I don't think that's anything to do with their relationship with the manager or how he feels about it. I think that the fans kind of booing, that's just what football fans do. They come, they support you at the start of the game, and you're right, Tam, that they'll be behind you from the start of the game, but then give them something back to cheer. They'll support you at the start of the second half, but give them something to cheer. Instead of that, we gave them a goal against. So it was always going to be difficult for the fans to get up for the game, because you're right in terms of the time they scored. But I still think Steve Clarke, I think the players like the camps. I think the players enjoy him as a manager and obviously his coaching staff. So at the moment, but I think that I wouldn't change it. But I think that it's pivotal whether we get to the World Cup or not. I think Tam's right again. I've said that 3 times in the one show. That's not like
anybody to say that.
Greenway's fashion choice this afternoon.
He's not right in that. But I think if they don't qualify for the World Cup, I think Steve Clarke will probably walk away. And you know what? He'll probably walk into another manager's job, and I think he should. Because I think he is a good manager. They're just having a little period now where they're kind of stuck in a rut, but I think a lot of that is because it's so raw, because the game was yesterday. I think in a couple of weeks' time, when we're building towards the friendlies, I think that it'll start to change. The Tartan Army, by and large, are a positive bunch. I mean, they have to be to follow Scotland all around the world. So I think, after a couple of weeks, when things kind of quieten down, they'll still want to go to these friendlies, and they'll still want to go and support their team and hope Scotland win.
Beer goggles can take you to the optimistic side of the world. But yeah, obviously Scotland have got Greece in the World Cup group. They've also got Denmark. That was confirmed last night in Belarus. And George Hurst believes that Greece might underestimate Scotland now when it comes to that World Cup qualification game in the autumn.
They're obviously in the same boat. They might look at it and go, sort of underestimate us next time, which if they do, then sort of fair play to them, and we'll be ready for that. So yeah, for us it's just about going out there, and obviously we didn't get the result tonight, but like I say, we're fortunate enough that we've got the chance to go and rectify that in a few months.
Just to remind everyone just how old they all are, that Karetsis was born in November 2007, 2 days after Italy had beaten Scotland in a qualifying game for Euro 2008. Are these 2 friendlies coming up? Is this when we want to see the transition of just bring in a bit of youth and let's see where we're going then getting into the qualifiers?
Yeah, he's also got to have that in the back of his mind. It is only two games away for the first qualifying game.
5th of September,
something like that. So he's got to sort of a juggle, and look at the players he's got available, because obviously it's a wee while till the next game. People keep form, people lose form. Is anybody going to jump out of the hat? Is there any players that we don't know about? I don't think there is. So I think the ones that we do know about have got to be given a chance, and he's got to come up with the right formation for me.
Okay, on a more positive note, before it soured a bit last night at Hampden, there was a tribute to Dennis Law with Sir Alex Ferguson in attendance to see it at Hampden. Are you quite pleased to see that, Ruffy? The first game at Hampden.
Dennis was just a wee bit just before my era, but I think we all know what he did in the game. Record goal scorer with Kenny. And all the teams that he played with, he was an absolute success. He actually played abroad as well, So I think the people of that era will respect him for what he done for the club, the country. Is
that what Scotland are missing just now? Sometimes you think just not so much like talent, that level of talent, but just characters, personalities.
Yeah, I mean, he was a superstar, Dennis Law, wasn't he, at Man United, and we just don't have any superstars in our team. That's just. Kenny Dalglish, superstar. These guys are world class. Graham Souness, Ruffy played with all these guys, and if you've got 1 or 2 or 3 of those guys in the right areas, you've seen Gareth Bale at Wales. They can carry you into tournaments. So unfortunately, we've not got that. But hopefully, they're hiding somewhere, or they're coming through, and we can give them an opportunity. But great to see Alex Ferguson last night getting a great ovation for the Tartan Army as well.
Mm-hmm. Scott McTominay too, he was voted the Scottish Football Writers Association International Player of the Year after a fantastic campaign just in the build-up to the Euros and then across recent months. Here's what he had to say on that.
Very proud, I'm so grateful as well, and very thankful to everyone who's helped me in this journey, especially Steve Clarke, to be honest, because he's the reason why I've been performing so well and the reason why I love coming to the camp, because he makes it such an amazing atmosphere, and for me I just want to do as much as I can for him and keep thriving as much as possible. Yeah, to be honest, the individual awards are amazing, but we all know it's a collective. You wouldn't get anything without your teammates and the staff, who actually not many people see what the staff do behind closed doors. So for me, obviously, it's predominantly dedicated to them and them helping me as much as possible.
That kind of buys into what you were saying about the players really encouraged by Steve Clarke. And I always think a barometer of a good coach is when you see players improve under their tutelage.
Yeah, and I think, you know, as a coach now, you have to, you always have, but more so now the way players are, you need to make relationships. You need to have good relationships. They need to trust you. You need to trust them. You need to give them, you know, you need to give them responsibilities, and there needs to be a back and forth. It's kind of gone are the days of a coach just shouting and bawling and telling you what to do all the time. There has to be that relationship. Your players basically have to like you, I think. And like I said before, whenever I've spoken to anyone or heard anyone speak who's been in Steve Clarke's camps, they all speak highly of him. They like the camps. They're kind of, I think they're a little bit different to what, you know, national camps have been before. There's more a club feel about it, and I think the players really relish that. So you hear Scott McTominay there gets an award, which, by the way, they need to change the name of that. That is the most biggest mouthful of award ever. But you hear the first thing he wants to do is thank Steve Clarke, and I think, you know, he's now been under different coaches at United. He's went over to Italy, different coaches there, but the one person he wants to thank is Steve Clarke, and I think that speaks to how good a relationship he has with his players. And again, that's probably why I don't think now is the time to change the manager. Having said that, there was really only one winner of that for me. Scott McTominay has been fantastic.
He's been the focal point really for that.
For the last few games, he's an absolute machine, and he drives the midfield. Obviously, unfortunately, he wasn't able to do it as much.
Continues his fantastic personal season anyway, and someone else who's shining across recent months is Nico Raskin. He got a standing ovation, Tam, after he made his full debut for Belgium. I think it was a 4-3 aggregate win over Ukraine that they had. You know, is that just another string to his bow last night?
Yeah, I think he's had a great season for Rangers. I think he's struggled a little bit with injuries at times, but I think when you see him, particularly in the bigger games, you know, Fenerbahce in both games, Celtic Park, I thought he was best player on the pitch. So to get into that Belgian team, and they've got some superstars in their team, you know, still, Kevin De Bruyne's guys like that. So to go in last night, they were 3-1 down from the first leg. I don't think anyone's seen them winning 3-0. You know, he was a pivotal, you know, point in doing that. So yeah, I think if you're a Rangers supporter, you're delighted the way he's playing for club and country. And you know, I think he's got a couple of years left in his contract.
He's got another 2 years in his contract, I think.
Listen, Rangers, I think Rangers will be looking to try and get him on a new deal, because once you go into that, you know, situation where you're playing for Belgium and you're man of the match against in a big tie, then there's a lot of clubs looking at you. So no, I think he's been excellent. There's obviously a bit of a running joke with social media with him and Engels, and Rangers fans, you know, looking at him and saying he's better than Engels, and Engels not in the squad. So that's the kind of rivalry that they'll probably take into the Belgian squad as well. So no, I think he's been superb for Rangers this season, and I think they'll be looking to tie him down longer term.
I think he got into that squad because there was a few injuries. I think there's some surprise that he was included, but now you go in, he takes his chance. Is it just about going in and trying to hang on to it now?
Yeah, that's what it's about. You know, if you're in a country that all these superstars are in, sometimes you have to wait your time, but when you're given it, you know, you've got to take it. You know, I think he's proved the form at Rangers has moved on to international football, and international football is the same as club football. The more games you get, the more confidence you get. You know, your pressure's off you a wee bit. You start to enjoy your football, and certainly that's what he's doing.
Does it make sense, Richard, for Rangers to tie him up? I mean, I think he's got 2 years still to go, but does it make sense just to get him on a long-term contract when you think there might be some eyes on him in that kind of stage?
Yeah, I think so. I think the level of exposure when you come on and start for Belgium is far greater than what it is even when you're playing an Old Firm game. I know they're well watched around the world, but I think possibly not as well respected, you know, in certain quarters. So I think going and doing it on an international stage, I think they'll start to kind of churn up interest in them. And you know, Rangers haven't been great at selling players at the right time. Morelos is the perfect example. Hold on to the players too long, they then leave for nothing. So I think it's either that if you see him as part of your plans. The problem they've got is we don't know who the manager's going to be. We don't know if it's going to be Barry Ferguson beyond the end of the season. I don't think it will be, but so I think they've still got time, which is completely fine. But probably within the next, you know, the start of next season, the first 6 months, they'll probably look to give him an offer him a new contract if they see him as part of their plans. They might just see it as an asset they can sell. Obviously,
it's almost a business decision, isn't
it? Exactly. Financially, it's not like they're in great shape. Might completely change with the new guys coming in. You don't know. They might, you know, bring in a treasure chest of funds. That's yet to be seen. So if they do, then they'll likely make him stay or offer him to stay. But what does he want to do? Does he want to stay in Scotland? Probably not. He probably wants to go to England, certainly, or other big leagues in Europe. So time will tell. But I think you're certainly getting into the realms of they need to start looking at offering him a contract, because otherwise teams will come sniffing about.
It does Scottish football and its image no harm at all. And when it comes to attracting players for clubs like Celtic and Rangers to go and try and bring talent in over the summer to say, here's our pathway. You know, there's no obstruction to advancing your career in an international sense, even when you're here.
Yeah, I think when younger players come to Celtic and Rangers, it's a stepping stone. Probably English Premier League, which is the biggest and richest league in the world. I think that's how Celtic got Engels in. You know, that's how they've sold that, to take him from the Bundesliga to Celtic. Listen, you're going to play in the Champions League. Next move for you might be English Premier League. I'm sure that was the situation with Nico Raskin as well. Buying him, just saying, listen, you do well here, you go into to bigger and better things. So, you know, Richard touched on it. The Rangers haven't been good at selling their players at the prime time, getting money for them. So
Kent, another example.
Ryan Kent was another one. So listen, if Nico Raskin's got any ambition, no disrespect, Rangers are a massive club, but his next step would want to be English Premier League for me if he continues the form he's in and getting man of the match for Belgium. So yeah, you're right. I think that come the summer, I think that Rangers will be looking to get him tied down, and if he's not interested in signing a new deal and he sees his future elsewhere, then it's the perfect time for them to sell him.
Idah too, he scored for the Republic of Ireland. Does he now need to maybe take some of that confidence, Ruffy, into going back to Celtic Park and just trying to end the season strongly?
Yeah, well, he's another one who I would think personally would want to be playing every week. He wouldn't want to be coming on the bench, you know, at Celtic or with his country, you know, but he's scoring goals, and most of the times he comes on with Celtic, he scores as well. So he's still a young player. He'll know what he's got to do to get into the team to stay there constantly. So it's up to him, you know, to training and the way he behaves himself and looks after himself. So he seems to be a young player. I think we all forget how young he is, you know, but he's certainly he needs to score goals and he needs to play in the first team.
That goal will have done his confidence no harm
took it
at
well.
all.
No, it was good. He came on as a sub, obviously, and clinched the win late on. You know, nice volley at the back post. So yeah, I don't think it's quite worked out for him this season. You know, I think last season when he came in loan, he had a point to prove. He looked hungry. I thought he's now got the move, the £9 million move, and I don't know if he's still got the same hunger or it's the pressure of the transfer fee. He just doesn't look the same player. I don't know if that's weighing on him. You know, and Dyson Maida's come in through the middle and been a revelation. So he's, as Ruffy says, he's coming on, and I think he looks the type of boy, you know, big unit. He needs to be playing every week for his fitness levels and his sharpness. So listen, that will give him confidence going back into Celtic.
It was notable he spoke about how positive he's found Brendan Rodgers to work with and the fact that he feels as though he's improved under him. But do you think he'll have an eye on coming back and just maybe accelerating and just holding down that first team start between now and the end of the season? I think where Celtic are just now in terms of the...
Yeah, every player wants to play. You always want to play. You want to play every week, but especially strikers, you know, to get the timing, you know, the sharpness, that little half yard you get, just, you know, to get on the end of a cross or to find yourself space in the box. I think they need that probably more than a lot of players in the team. He's just unfortunate that, you know, what Idah brings to Celtic's front line in that middle of the, you know, as that number 9, the striker. I don't think Idah is ever going to get there in terms of his work rate. So it's the only way he's going to play is if Celtic look to play a slightly different way. Now against a Rangers, for example, when they're high pressure, I thought Idah would have been perfect to put him on so Celtic can kind of play the longer pass, beat the press. So there's certainly there's a space for him in the team. There's an argument to say that Celtic are maybe better with Idah through the middle and Idah wide and Jota or Kuhn not playing. Now the start of the season, Kuhn you would never have imagined saying that, but he kind of went off the boil. Jota's still not back to the level that we've seen before he left. So you know it'll be hard for him because he wants to play every week. But I think if he feels that he's improving week on week as a player, he just needs to bide his time, because there will be an opportunity for him because of his size, because of his stature, and because he does actually score goals. I think there will be a place for him at Celtic, but at the moment, the way they like to go with that really fast, really fluid front line, and he struggles to get first team, you know, start. So it's one of them. I think just now, still relatively young, just be a bit more, just be patient, keep improving week to week, and you never know. Next season might be the season he really hits the ground running. Would
you be giving Kuhn a break just now, Ruffer?
As Richard said, nobody wants a break. Everybody wants to play. You know, if you're going through a wee bad spell, you want to play to get yourself back to where you were. You know, the amount of ability these guys have got, it's not going to disappear. Something's going to happen, and he's going to score a terrific goal, and that'll put him back to where he was. But you know, I think every player has a wee off peak at the time, if you want to call it that. But most of these guys have got the quality to come back.
Okay, well, there's a headache too for Rodgers with news that Kasper Schmeichel had saved a penalty to deny Ronaldo and then injured his shoulder. I think the first X-ray seemed to say no.
Saving the penalty from Ronaldo?
I don't think
it wasn't.
No, I think it was one of the late offsides. You know, it was like the assistant referee allowing play to go on. He makes a save when someone's clearly in an offside position and then hurts his shoulder. That's been an accident waiting to happen.
It has, and it really annoys me. It probably annoys everyone here. When he's clearly offside and he waits till a couple of 30 seconds later, because somebody can get hurt and he puts his flag up. But yeah, that will be a big blow, I think, for Celtic and for Brendan Rodgers.
I think that he was pictured in a sling, and then I think an X-ray, the Danish squad had said an X-ray showed no substantial damage. However, they're going to have an MRI scan just to ascertain if there was any tissue damage or anything there. But that will be a real headache for Celtic.
Yeah, it will be. He's been superb. I thought he was poor in the Old Firm game, as most of the Celtic players were, an off day. But listen, he's been fantastic for Celtic. So the Celtic supporters will be hoping that he's ready to go at the weekend.
Okay, and we'll take a wee quick look now at the Championship. Neil Lennon is about to be unveiled as the new Dunfermline boss tomorrow afternoon. Ruffy, your former colleague on this couch.
Yeah, I think we all know that when Lenny was in here, you know, he had put himself forward for quite a number of jobs. I think personally he was a bit disappointed that some of the people that were getting the jobs that he was going for interviews didn't have the CV that he had. So he was a wee bit disillusioned by that. So I think he's been out of the game long enough to say, well, Dunfermline, very, very big club, new owners coming in, they have new ideas. You know, obviously he'll want to know the way that they want to take that club. But Dunfermline certainly are a team that should be challenging in the Championship, know where they are. And certainly we saw the response that Lenny got when he went to Hibs. It was very, very good. So no, I'm sure he'll give a few people a wee bit of a shake when he gets there.
And his first game, of course, is against Scott Brown, a man who was his captain at Celtic.
Yeah, two of them are good friends. I messaged Scott and I think he's looking forward to coming up against Neil next Saturday. You know, I'm sure they'll be friends before the game, they'll have a beer after the game, but for 90 minutes they'll want to beat each other, and the two of them are winners, out and out winners. It's a big game for both. Listen, Dunfermline, I've played with Dunfermline in the Premier League. They were getting good crowds and played in Europe with Dunfermline. They're a big club. We got to the Scottish Cup final against Celtic. So, listen, they're a big club. They shouldn't be where they are, and it's up to Neil to keep them in division and then see what happens next season. But we obviously, United drawn at the weekend. They've kind of dropped off the pace as well for challenging for the league. So, I think Neil's first two games are United and Livingston. So it's quite a baptism for him. But he'll be looking to pick up points, and I think the Dunfermline fans that I know and I've seen and spoke to are really excited for him going in, and I think that the owners might have pulled off a little bit of a coup here, because I think they'll turn up in the numbers to go back Neil Lennon as well as the manager.
That's the thing. Obviously, his first remit is to keep them in that league, and then obviously try and see where it goes from there. But do you think it's a shrewd appointment?
I do. I think Tam. No, I'm not saying that again. Tam makes a good point that he's a big name. He's a Premiership manager, and you could argue in the size of the club, the size of the fan base, that Dunfermline are a Premiership club. You know, I know we at different times we speak about extending the league to 16 teams, and they would be very much in that bracket. Not currently, based on where they are, but in terms of size of the club, certainly. And I think it's a great appointment. Don't know him, obviously speak to Neil Lennon if I see him, but don't know him personally. But you can tell every time you hear him speak that he loves the game and he's desperate to get back in the game, and his CV is good. You know, he's got quite the CV. So the fact that he hasn't got a job before now is surprising, but the fact that he's now back into one, I'm sure he's going to relish the opportunity. And I think the guys are right there that, you know, if you know that Neil Lennon's your new manager, you're going to change. You're going to change your demeanour. You're going to give an extra 5-10%. You're going to come in earlier in training. You're going to work a little bit harder, because if you don't, then you don't really understand what it's going to take to get you out of that situation. You know, you get somebody like Neil Lennon coming in. He's a winner. He's done it at a high level. He's done it as a player. If that doesn't spark you into action as a Dunfermline player, then you probably don't deserve to be at Dunfermline.
I'm sorry, Alison. If Neil can't get a tune out of them, then no one can. This is the third manager of the season. You know, they've had James McPake, who we had in the show. They've had Michael Tidser. Now they've got Neil
11
Lennon.
games for Michael to
Yeah, so listen, if Neil can't get a tune out these players, then I think the fingers will be pointed firmly at the players, because I think Neil's gone in there in a kind of no-lose situation, you know, at the minute, because of the way they've been this season. They're now on the third manager, so I think he's got to get in there. I think they will. He'll get a lift for the players.
So Falkirk are 10 points clear, of course, and Scott Arfield scored again. I think that's his 6th goal in 7 games. He's been a really smart signing in January.
Certainly, I was surprised he was on the bench at the weekend, obviously, you know, trying to give him a wee rest. You know, they thought they'd maybe win that game quite easily, but I think it was a wee bit tougher than what they thought, you know, so obviously he came on and scored. But yeah, since he's come in there, you know, it's unbelievable, right for the start, a hat-trick in the first game, wasn't it? You know, and ever since he went in there, it's just been so positive. And again, as Richard said, when you've got somebody like that in the dressing room with the CV, other players start lifting their game a wee bit. So it's been a really, really smart appointment to bring him in there.
Like to see John McGlynn in the top flight?
I would. Back-to-back promotions would be fantastic for Falkirk. Again, another club I played with, and in the Premier League, they're another big club, similar size to Dunfermline, and you know, they go into the Premier League next season. You know, they will get, you know, great crowds. That place will be full. They're selling out all their games at the minute in the Championship. So I like John McGlynn. I like the way he plays. He's a brave manager. You know, you've seen it at Celtic Park.
Yeah,
caught a lot of people by surprise when you thought Falkirk Championship team, they'll just go there and park the bus. They went the right go at Celtic and were ahead twice. So yeah, I think that he deserves it for his bravery as a manager, and it's great that you can play that way and get results. It's a perfect situation.
Okay, well, the other game this weekend in Scotland at Fir Park was the Sky Sports Women's Cup final. Rangers winning 5-0 to retain the trophy. That's the 3rd successive season in which they've kept hold of that one, and they'll look to use that as a catalyst now to go on and claim a domestic treble. But we caught up with Judy Murray at Fir Park on Saturday afternoon.
Following Hibs for many, many years. My dad used to play for Hibs, and I used to take Jamie and Andy to the Hibs kids when they were little. And I don't get along to all that many matches, but I'm always following them. I think social media is a great way to follow. And the women's team, of course, I'm a huge supporter of women's sport, and it is so important that we invest in the performance of our athletes, whatever the sport is, because the better the performance, the more people will come to watch it, and the more eyes you'll get on screens.
Okay, that was Judy Murray, and you can catch up with all the fallout from that one on our Women's Football Show. It'll be available from tomorrow afternoon. But that's all we've got time for today. Thanks to Tam, thanks to Ruffy, and thanks to Richard. Don't forget, there's loads of content across our social media platforms. We've got the Women's Football Show, we've got the Footballers Football Show with Tam, we've got the journals coming out, and of course we'll have all the build up to this weekend's domestic action. Back to domestic football, Tam, after the international break this week. So don't forget to download our app, where you'll get all the breaking news at your fingertips. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching.